Chapter 4. Kill that bear. The beast has arms strong enough to tear you limb from limb, a fanged mouth big enough to bite off your head. What chance have you against such a foe? None at all. You are as good as dead. I know the answer. It is simple. Kill it from a distance. Thorn sought me out 5 years ago when she was just 10 years old. I was seated cross-legged under an oak tree close to Barley village, and meditating on my next task, to seek out and kill something that wasn't human. In the forest northeast of Pendle, a bear had turned rogue and had killed 3 humans in the last month. There were few bears left in the county, but it had to die. I was not aware of the approach of danger because I did not recognize it in one so young. The child came very close to me and kicked me hard on the thigh with the toe of her pointy shoe. In a second I was on my feet. I lifted her by her hair and dangled her so her face was close to mine. "If you ever do that again," I warned her, "I will slice off your foot." "I'm brave," she said. "Don't you agree? Who else would dare to kick the witch assassin?" I looked at her more closely. She was just a slip of a thing with hardly any meat on her bones, but she had a determination in her eyes that was very unusual in one so young. It was as if something much older and much more powerful glared out of that young face, but I wasn't going to take any nonsense from her. "You're more stupid than brave," I retorted. "Be off with you. Go back to your mother. There'll be chores for you to do." "Don't have a mother or a father. I live with my ugly uncle. He beats me every day." "Do you kick him?" "Yes, and he beats me even harder." I looked at the girl again, noting the bruises on her arms and the dark mark under her left eye. "What do you want from me, child?" "I would like for you to kill my uncle for me." I laughed and set her down on the ground, and then knelt so we were eye to eye once more. "If I killed your uncle, then who would feed and clothe you?" "I will work. I will feed myself. I will become a witch assassin like you." "To become the witch assassin of our clan, you will need to kill me. Are you capable of that? You're just a child." Traditionally, each year, 3 witches would train to challenge the incumbent clan assassin, but no one has confronted me for many years. After slaying the 15th pretender, I put a stop to the practice, having growing sick and weary of slaying these challengers. It was a foolish waste of life that was gradually bleeding away the strength of the Malkin clan. "Soon I'll be as big as you, but I won't kill you," the girl said. "You will die one day, and they will be ready to replace you. The clan needs a strong assassin. Train me." "Go home, child. Go back and kick your uncle even harder. I will not train you." "Then I will come back and kick you again tomorrow." With that, she left, and I thought no more of it, but she returned the next day and came to stand before me. I was in my forge sharpening a new blade. "Did you kick your ugly uncle again?" I asked, unable to prevent myself from a smile from creeping across my face as I rested the completed blade on the anvil. The child did not reply. She stepped forward and tried to kick me again, but I was ready. I slapped her hard and threw her down in the dirt. I wasn't angry, though I'd had enough of her foolishness and wanted to show her that I was not to be trifled with. But the girl was stubborn, and yes, she was brave. She attempted another kick. This time I snatched up my blade and pointed it at her throat. "Before the end of the day, child, this new blade will taste blood. Take care that it isn't yours." Then I threw her over my shoulder and carried her towards the forest. It was late afternoon when I found the tracks of the bear, dusk when I reached its lair, a cave in the wooded hillside. There were bones outside, scattered across the loam. Some of them were human. I could hear the animal scuffling about inside its den. It soon caught our scent, and moments later emerged on all fours. It was big, brown, and fierce. Blood was smeared across its snout and paws. It had been eating, but still looked hungry. It glared at us for a moment, and I stared back hard and hissed at it to provoke it. It reared up on its hind legs and gave a terrible bellow of anger. I set the girl down on the ground at my side. "What's your name?" I demanded. "Thorn Malkin." I handed her the blade I'd formed and sharpened that morning. "Well, Thorn, go and kill that bear for me," I commanded. She stared at the bear, which was now lumbering towards us, its mouth open, ready to charge. For the first time I saw fear in her eyes. "It's too big," she said. "Nothing is too big to be killed by a witch assassin. Slay that bear for me, and I will train you. Then one day you will take my place." "What if it kills me?" I smiled. The bear was now getting very close. "In that case, I will wait until the bear starts to eat you. Once it is distracted, I will kill it." Something happened then that was completely unexpected. By now the child was shaking with fear and looked ready to flee at any second. This was exactly what I wanted. My intention was to cure her of the folly of wishing to become a witch assassin. And she did run, but not in the direction I expected. Thorn lifted the blade, gave a yell, and ran straight towards the bear. When I drew and hurled another blade, she was just seconds away from death. I rarely missed, and my aim was perfect, the dagger burying itself up to the hilt in the bear's left eye. It staggered and started spinning, but Thorn was still sprinting towards it. As she stabbed it in the left hind, the dead animal collapsed on top of her. She was lucky not to have been killed, or at least seriously hurt by such a weight falling on her. When I dragged her out, she was covered in bear blood, but otherwise unhurt. I had been impressed by the courage displayed in one so young. She deserved to walk away unscathed. "I killed it!" she exclaimed triumphantly. "Now you have to train me." I lifted the head of the bear and pointed at the dagger embedded in its left eye. "I killed it," I told her. "You merely offered it supper. But now we'll have a supper of our own. This bear has dined on human flesh for quite a while. Now you will eat its heart." I was good to my word. Whilst Thorn collected the wood, I took what I needed from the bear, its heart and 2 tender slices from its rump. Soon I had a fire going and was cooking the meat on a spit. Once I was done, I cut the heart into 2 and handed half to the girl. "It's good," she said. "I've never tasted bear meat before." "There are very few bears left, but just in case you ever confront another, there are a couple things you ought to know. Never stab it in the leg, it only makes it angry. And never get in close. Such an animal must be killed from a distance. They are immensely strong. Once a bear has a hold of you, you're good as dead. They can tear off your limbs or crush your skull with one bite." Thorn chewed her meat thoughtfully. "I'll remember that next time we go bear hunting," she said. I almost laughed out loud at the presumption of that "we," and yet I smiled at her. "You were afraid, child, and yet you obeyed me and attacked the bear, so yes, I will begin to train you. I will give you a month to prove yourself." I picked up the new blade that Thorn had used to stab the bear. "Here," I said, handing it to her. "This is yours now. You have earned it. This is your first blade." Thus I began to train Thorn, but I did so in secret. There were 3 reasons for that. Firstly, if any of my enemies knew of the girl would become a target. By capturing or by hurting Thorn, they might seek to bring pressure to bear upon me. Secondly, I was jealous of my reputation and wished to continue to inspire fear for my ruthlessness and independence. This was for the reason that I carved the image of scissors on trees. Thirdly, the succession to the Grimalkin witch clan had traditionally been chosen through combat. I judged it best that after my death the practice should continue once more. Witches would then compete with each other for the title. I did not wish to look at it as if I was personally selecting my protege as my successor. If Thorn became the next assassin, she would have to earn that position in the conventional manner. I had no doubt she would do so. The month passed quickly, and so was all to my satisfaction. The girl was courageous and obedient. The latter was important. I prefer to work alone, but with a partner I must be in charge, and there is no room for wayward behavior. I remember the first time Thorn showed her true worth, and I realized just how good an assassin she might one day become. Water witches dwell in the far north of the country. They are no friend to the Pendle covens, and they had recently killed a Grimalkin witch who'd been traveling south through their territory. I had been dispatched by my clan to kill three of their numbers in retaliation. Thorn took no part in the slaying of the water witches. She was there to watch and to learn. I killed three as directed, and then, choosing a clearing in the foliage, I placed their heads on stakes, carving the sign of my scissors onto the surrounding trees. Thus there could be no mistake. It was not just for vengeance, it was a warning. With hindsight, I realized that I should have left immediately afterwards and sped back to Pendle. Instead, Thorn and I spent the useful days on the shore of the lake that some called Coniston. It was a day of training, and I pushed the girl hard. The sun had just gone down to the trees where we began her knife training. I was trying to teach her to be calm and control her anger. She had the blades. I used my hands. "Cut me!" I shouted, slapping her face and stepping back out of range. Thorn whirled towards me, wielding two blades, slashing at me, her face full of fury. I stepped inside her guard and slapped her even harder, twice this time, stinging both her cheeks and bringing tears to her face. "Keep calm, girl. It's only pain," I mocked. "Think. Concentrate. Cut me." She missed again, and I gave her another hard slap. We were close to the water's edge, and by now it was twilight. Tendrils of mist snaked towards us over the lake's surface. Thorn took a deep breath, and I saw her face relax. This time she feigned, and the arc of her first blade came so close that I felt its breath whisper over the skin of my shoulder. I smiled in appreciation, and took a rapid step backwards to avoid her next thrust. I was inches from the water's edge, and the lake was deep. The attack came suddenly, taking us both by surprise. I had my back to the water, and Thorn saw the creature first. Her eyes widened in shock, and I turned and glanced over my shoulder, seeing the death that was surging towards me. The beast had arms and long fingers with sharp talons, but was more fish than man, with a nightmare face and cold eyes, a mouth full of sharp teeth, and a long, sinuous, eel-like body with a narrow fin. I tried to twist away, but it surged out of the water, riding on its tail, seizing me by the shoulder, and yanked me backwards. As my head went under the cold water, I realized that I had no blade at my disposition. I had been fighting Thorn unarmed. My leather straps, sheaths, and knives were spread out on the grass some distance from the water's edge. But I wasn't finished yet, and with the nails of my left hand I gouged out the creature's right eye, and then bit through the fingers to the bone. However, it was immensely strong and was dragging me further and further into the murky water. I hadn't had time to snatch a deep breath, and now realized I was in trouble. But then I saw another shape in the water beside me, and felt a knife being pressed into my hand. I used it quickly to good effect. And I wasn't alone. Thorn was by my side, and together we cut that creature to pieces. At dawn we assembled its remaining fragments beside the lake. I had never seen anything quite like it before, but without doubt abhuman. They take many strange forms, and this one had been adapted for aquatic life. The fiend sometimes uses such creatures to destroy his enemies. He cannot come near me, so he'd sent one of his children instead. Without doubt, Thorn saved my life that day. It had required a great deal of courage to join me in the water like that. As a reward, I boiled up the creature's thumb bones and gave them to her. They were the first bones that she hung on her necklace. Back in Pendle, I customarily trained Thorn several times a week, and occasionally took her along with me when I set off on long journeys, seeking out those marked for death by my clan. I'd watched her develop from a young, eager girl into a potential witch assassin who would one day take my place. Because of the war and my journey to Ireland, it was several months that I had last seen her, but I knew she would always be ready to answer my call. I stared into the mirror now and chanted the incantation. Within moments, Thorn's face came into focus. Gone was the child who charged the bear. She had gentle eyes, each iris a vivid sapphire blue, but her lean face was that of a warrior, with a wide mouth and sharp nose. Her dark hair was cropped short, and she had a small tattoo on her left cheek, an effigy to a bear. She had done it to remind her of the day that I'd agreed to train her. "You're hurt," she mouthed, showing her teeth. "What happened?" I'd forbidden her to file teeth to points until her training was fully complete, so her rare smiles were not yet terrifying to others. I told her about the crutch and the poison, that it was the severed head of the fiend that concerned me most, and I explained what I had in the leather sack. This was the real reason why I was reluctant summoning Thorn into such great danger. Whatever happens, it must not be allowed to fall into the hands of the fiend's servants, I continued. If I die, you must take over that burden. Of course, but you're not going to die. Where are you? Southwest of Pendle, about 5 miles from the base of the hill. Then hold on, I'll be with you very soon. How far behind you is the crutch? It's impossible to be sure, I told her. We're probably only a few hours at most. Then try to keep moving. Remember what you once said to me, you've only just begun to fight. With that, the mirror darkened and Thorn was gone. Fighting against the pain, I struggled to my feet again, and began to stagger eastward once more, my breathing hoarse and ragged. My progress was very slow, and I started to imagine I could hear the crutch padding through the trees behind me, getting closer and closer, ready to spring. At one point I whirled around to meet it, but there was nothing there. The next thing I remember is lying on my back with the rain falling straight into my face. I opened my eyes in panic. Where was the leather sack? I reached out but found nothing beside me. It's safe. I have it beside me, said a voice I knew. Thorn was kneeling beside me, looking concerned. I tried to sit up, but she gently pushed me back down. Rest, she said firmly. Give the potion time to take effect. I called in to see Agnes on my way here. What she sent is not a cure, but it should buy you some time. After you spat out the first mouthful, I managed to pour most of it down your throat. The crutch. Is it close? I asked her. Thorn shook her head. I can't sniff its approach. If we can reach Pendle, we'll be safe for a while. The witches who made the creature are from the southwest of the country. They will not dare venture into our territory. I hope you're right, said Thorn. But the clans are divided. Some may allow them entry. Now, try to stand. She helped me to my feet, but I was unsteady, and she had to support me. Although only 15 and not yet fully grown, she is now almost as tall as me, and looked every inch a witch assassin. She was dressed in a similar fashion to me. Leather straps crisscrossed her body, the sheaths holding blades. I smiled at her. I'm still not strong enough to travel. Leave me and take the sack. That's what's really important. We'll travel together, Thorn said firmly. Remember how you once carried me? We were hunting the bear? Yes, I remember it well. I was thinking about that earlier. Well, now I'll carry you. With that, Thorn hoisted me onto her shoulder, and, holding the leather sack in her left hand, began to jog eastward. We were heading towards Agnes Sourbutt's cottage on the outside of the Dean village of Rowley. It was strange to be carried in this way. I was at war with myself. One part felt anger at my weakness, the resentment towards Thorn for treating me thus. The other felt gratitude for her help, and was well aware of the skill of Agnes Sourbutt, who would probably give me the best possible chance at surviving. After a while, the stabbing pain in my lungs started to return as the effects of the potion began to wear off. The agony slowly intensified until I could hardly breathe and felt myself losing consciousness again. The next thing I remember is what sounded like an eerie cry of a corpse fowl very close by. Then there was a sudden stillness and a change of temperature. I was no longer being carried. I was inside, out of the rain. I lay on a bed as someone was bending over beside me. The concerned face of Agnes Sourbutt swam into view. I felt my head being lifted, and suddenly my mouth was full of a vile-tasting liquid. I swallowed a little and almost vomited. I wanted to spit the rest out, but fought to control my urge. Agnes was trying to help me. She was my only hope of survival. So I forced myself to swallow again and again and again. After a while, a strange warmth spread slowly from my stomach to my extremities. I felt comfortable. I think I slept for a little while. But then I was awake again. My body was racked with pain. There were sharp twinges in my chest. Each breath was like daggers stabbing into my heart. My limbs throbbed and felt as heavy as lead. Whatever potion Agnes had given me, it hadn't worked for long. I opened my eyes and could see nothing. Everything was dark. Had the poison taken away my sight? The poison is too virulent. She's dying. I'm sorry, but there's nothing more I can do. And that is the end of chapter 4.